Yo, what is up guys, Grim here. Have you ever wondered if you're actually using Jingliu's best team? Is Bronya and Pela really as good as it gets? And how good is Blade with her? Well, I tested every single team combination between all her best partners in Memory of Chaos 10 to see which team reigns supreme and clears the fastest. Here's how it works. We choose one support to focus on, for example Bronya, and run every single team combination through Memory of Chaos Side 1 to see which feels the best and can clear the fastest. Bronya Pela, Bronya Asta, Bronya Blade, or Bronya Yukong. Who will be the winner? Any teams that don't feel strong or get slow clear times are kicked out of the running. After we cycle through every combination for that support, we'll move on to the next one. And after we've tested literally every single team combination on side 1, we'll take the best performers and pit them against each other on side 2 to find the best. Because of the sheer number of teams to test, I'll give each comp 3 attempts and use the fastest clear in the results. If you think I missed any teams or think you can clear faster on a team, make sure to comment down below. After the results are in, I'll show you exactly how to play and build the best Jingliu teams we've found for free to play, Hypercarry, and double DPS. As a quick disclaimer, we're testing against a specific Memory of Chaos, and your character investment may be different, so team performance, especially in different content, may vary. Interpret the results at your own discretion, you can discuss them in the comments down below. Jingliu is going to be used in every one of our tests, so let me take you through her gear so you know what to expect. We've got a crit ratio of 50/226, and we're using her signature light cone here. But don't worry, when we get to the free to play tests, I'll be swapping this out for On the Fall of an Aeon. We've got a respectable amount of attack and a good amount of ice damage from our ice orb. She is of course E0 and has all of her traces unlocked. We're using a 4-piece Musketeer of Wildweed and a 2-piece Space Sealing Station, which isn't ideal, but that's all the gear I've got. For all of our tests, we'll be using Luocha, as he's a great control unit because he doesn't bring any damage or buffs himself, and has enough skill points to allow each support to function as they want to. Don't worry though, we'll be swapping him out for Bailu when we get to the free-to-play teams at the end. He's using a multiplication light cone at S5, is E0, has decent trace investment, and is on 4-piece Musketeer of Wildweed and 2-piece Fleet of the Ageless. We'll be running every single team comp through 1.3's Memory of Chaos Side 1 to start with. This side is great for Jingliu, it features plenty of Ice Weak monsters for her to AoE down. Now, with Jingliu's power level in mind, any team composition that can't easily zero cycle this side, considering my account's gear level, won't be moving on to further testing. The first support we'll be focusing on is Bronya. She's going to be equipped with S1 of her signature throughout all these tests. She has high crit damage, has a little bit less speed than Jingliu on purpose, is bulky, is E1, and of course has decent trace investment. The relic she's using is 2-piece Hackerspace and 2-piece Wildweed, as well as 2-piece Fleet of the Ageless. Bronya is considered Jingliu's best support, and for good reason. All you need to do is make her 1 speed slower than Jingliu and spam her skill on her. This will result in twice as many attacks and obscene buffs at whatever speed you end up having them at. Thanks to Jingliu's low cost rotation, Bronya's usual weakness of skill points is also no problem. But for ideal play, ensure your Bronya is at 134 to 136 speed, and your Jingliu is just 1 to 2 speed higher than that. With that said, let's see how our team comps stack up against side 1. Alright, so after running every single Bronya composition, we can see that most of them were actually able to achieve a 0 cycle. Now you might notice that Blade is missing, but don't worry, we're saving him until later. Teams here marked in green felt phenomenal to play and achieved low cycle counts. Teams in yellow got good times but performed worse, and teams in red were slower than the competition. All of the 3 top teams here all felt phenomenal, and I'd recommend every one of them. My favorite was definitely Bronya Tingyun though. It felt like I was literally playing with cheat codes, attacking so much and getting so many ultimates. But Pela and Silverwolf were also great combos as well, thanks to the defense shred and res shred. Bronya Asta wasn't a good combo. You hardly ever get the speed buff from her ultimate because Bronya is always advancing her forward, so it always falls off so quickly. And in addition to that, both Asta and Yukong have tons of attack boosts, and we already know that Jingliu already has a lot of those, so we don't really need more of them. Thanks to their performance, the comps containing Pela, Silverwolf, and Tingyun will all be moving on to testing in Side 2 to see who performs the best over there. Tingyun and her comps are up next. My Tingyun's using an S5 dance, but you can also use S5 meshing of cogs and it might even be better. We've got maximum speed investment and I recommend you do too. We've got a bit of bulk and just enough attack to cap out her buff. We're at E6 and decent trace investment with 4-piece Musketeer of Wildwheat and 2-piece Flee the Ageless. Tingyun Jingliu comps feel kinda underrated compared to Bronya's hype, but she is capable of allowing Jingliu to use her ultimate twice, or if you get enough kills, even 3 times per transmigration state, which I'll actually be showing off in this video. Her attack boost, damage boost, and extra lightning damage multiplier is also really nice. So let's see how she went. So literally all of Tingyun's compositions managed to 0 cycle side 1, which in my opinion is very impressive. All the compositions in green felt phenomenal to play and had the biggest numbers. In addition to that, they also had actions or ultimates left over, so there was a lot of wiggle room. Now the compositions in yellow took a few attempts to get the 0 cycle, and it was really close, so they're definitely a little bit less powerful, at least in this memory of chaos. Overall, I think that's because of the way the multipliers stack up from Asta and Yukong, but we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to them specifically. Pela is next, and for all these tests, she's been on S5 Pearls of Sweat and has been built fast and tanky. Good trace investment, E6, and the usual relic setup. Pela is one of the best complementary supports for Jingliu, but isn't great at supporting her alone. However, she is insane with another Harmony unit. She specializes in fast AoE clears and beats out her competition like Silverwolf in that department. At E4, she also gets an Ice Shred, which is invaluable to someone like Jingliu, and is something we've been keeping up 100% of the time in all of these tests. Unfortunately, with the exception of the Tingyun and Bronya clears, the rest of them were a little underwhelming. And the reason for that, I think, is that we just didn't get enough actions on our Jingliu. Without the extra energy and ultimates from Tingyun or the extra actions from Bronya, we just didn't have enough juice to get things over the line. Now we did manage to get a 0 cycle with Yukong, but that was very close, and with Asta and Silverwolf we couldn't make it happen. Next up onto our next Nihility unit, Silverwolf, who's using S5 tutorial, is built tanky and fast, is using the usual relic sets, and is E2. Finally, she's got decent trace investment. Silverwolf is very similar to Pela, but with much more of a focus on single target multipliers, which for speed clearing can hurt her a little bit on side 1 here. The main difference between her and Pela is her ability to make enemies ice weak and shred a tremendous amount of resistance, which multiplies Jingliu's damage like crazy. Her ability to break for quantum can also contribute some nice damage compared to her counterpart. Her utility is not to be underestimated, but let's see how fast she clears. And similar to before, it's a similar story. With Bronya and Tingyun, she's phenomenal, but without them, you don't get enough actions or ultimates to get the job done fast. Now with Pela and Yukong, she ended up doing a 1 cycle clear, which isn't what we're looking for. Fortunately with Asta though, thanks to the extra speed, Silverwolf was able to apply all her debuffs to every elite and get some nice break-in, so we were actually able to 0 cycle with that comp, which makes it a little bit nicer. But it was pretty close and took a few attempts. Yukong in all of our tests was built tanky, fast, and was using S5 meshing of cogs. We're using the usual relic setup as always, E6, and decent trace investment. Yukong is an incredible support, especially at E6, thanks to her gigantic attack percent boost and crit multipliers. But unfortunately, due to the frequency of Jingliu's attacks and her already high multipliers, the synergy is a little lacking. When running Yukong, I even tried switching a few crit rate pieces off of Jingliu to take better advantage of Yukong's buffs, but I still couldn't achieve the clear speeds I was after. Despite saying all that, Yukong did manage to achieve quite a few 0 cycles, but they were really down to the wire and took me a few attempts. The synergy does feel a little lacking, and without E6, I imagine it's gonna feel even tougher. She's not my #1 priority and not someone I'd really recommend unless you really don't have anything else, as you can see by the results here. Our final Harmony support, Asta, is of course built tanky and fast, is using S5 meshing of cogs, but is using 4-piece hacker space to reach some special speed breakpoints. She is E6 and has good trace investment. Asta, the speed stacking queen, has a lot of potential with a lot of characters, but unfortunately has some pretty extreme anti-synergy with Jingliu. Asta requires a very specific amount of uptime and speed in order to hit breakpoints to grant extra actions with her ultimate, 201 speed to be exact, which I tried my best to adjust my Jingliu's gear for. Even with the correct speed though, because of Jingliu's on and off rotation and the fact she advances her action, you quite often don't get full value out of Asta's kit, which makes her very tricky to use. Let's see how she stacked up. So as we can see, it's not pretty. Out of all the supports we've looked at, she performed the worst, with a lot of sketchy 1 cycles and pretty tricky 0 cycles. Even when she did achieve the 0 cycle, it was seriously close or took a few attempts and tinkering. So overall, I feel like Asta isn't at her best with Jingliu and has so many more powerful synergies with other characters which I'd recommend over this pairing. Hold up, what's this? A new challenger appears, Blade. We're going to be running with Jingliu. We've got 6.4k life, a decent crit ratio. We're using as one of his signature E0, 4-piece Longvis, 2-piece Salsotto, good trace investment, and let's see how he does. Jingliu is capable of being a sub DPS for literally any DPS unit in the game, from Sele to Jingyuan, but the one she has the most synergy with is Blade. Every time Jingliu attacks in Transmigration state, she grants Blade a stack of his talent. His wind typing and insane AoE also gives the combo incredible type and damage coverage. But is it worth it to run though? Well, kinda. So I took the 4 best supports we just talked about and ran them alongside Jingliu and Blade. Now remember that 2 of the 3 elites on side 1 are actually wind resistant. But despite this, the teams with Silverwolf and Pela didn't perform well. They got a 1 cycle clear. But when we look at Tingyun and Bronya, they were very strong clears and very compelling. So those were very much worth running. So where to from here? Well, it's time to take the best teams and pit them against side 2 to discover the strongest team for this Memory of Chaos once and for all. Side 2 is fully wind vulnerable, so Blade Teams certainly get a boost, and the final boss, Yangqing, is ice resistant, meaning the shred from Pela and Silverwolf could be invaluable. Is it going to be enough to beat out the 2 Harmony powerhouses? Well, only one way to find out. Let's take a look at the clears. All the teams we're about to talk about have 0 cycled side 1, and I've narrowed down the categories to Bronya Teams, Tingyun Teams, and Blade Teams, as they were the strongest performers. So let's take a look. Bronya is up first, and her teams were really strong in side 2. Bronya, Pela, and Jingliu got a 2 cycle, which is kind of expected but very strong. Bronya, Jingliu, and Silverwolf, though, on the other hand, was very close to a 1 cycle, and a little bit stronger than the Pela team in my opinion, but definitely still a 2 cycle. Now the standout one here though, which surprised me more than anything, was Jingliu, Bronya, and Tingyun. The ice resistance on Yangqing didn't even matter. The amount of multipliers, ultimates, and extra actions we were able to stack with this team just blew that resistance right out of the water. No shred needed. And this is truly terrifying for me, because what happens when that boss isn't ice resistant? My goodness. Our Tingyun comps are up next, of which we have 2 we haven't already touched on. The first one is Jingliu, Tingyun, and Pela. Those are 2 4-star supports, and the time this team got for its clear was phenomenal, a 2 cycle clear, which is equivalent to a team containing E1 Bronya and another 5-star support, which is absolutely blowing my mind. And this means this team is actually free to play viable. If you take some of the E6s away off the 4 stars, you will lose some damage, but everything else is there. You can make this team work, which is why I'm particularly excited, and we'll be using this team in our free-to-play section here, so just great. Now the other team, which I actually expected to do a little better, was Jingliu, Tingyun, and Silverwolf. I thought that Silverwolf's contribution on the resistance shred on Yangqing, ripping off that ice resistance, would have given this a pretty good clear time, but it's clear that without the AoE application of these debuffs, Silverwolf fell a little bit behind in this test, specifically in the first wave, which had a lot of AoE elites to deal with. We weren't able to get the debuffs on in time, which slowed this team down just a little bit. To finish us off, we've got our Blade teams here. So we've got a really high performer and a bit of an underperformer. Our Jingliu, Blade, and Tingyun team didn't hit the mark that I think I was expecting at least, with a 3 cycle clear, which is on the slower side for these super competitive teams. Overall, I've chalked this up to the fact that we didn't have any way to frequently activate Blade over the longer fight, so we didn't stack up as many talents as we might have liked. In addition to that, we had no defense shred and no resistance shred for the enemies, which weren't vulnerable to ice and even had ice resistance. Now the Jingliu, Blade, and Bronya comp on the other hand had one of the fastest clears, tying with the best Hypercarry team. and I chalk this up to really turbocharging Blade with Bronya. But not only that, the coolest thing with this team is that you can switch between boosting Jingliu when the enemies aren't ice resistant or are ice vulnerable to boosting Blade when you have an ice resistant enemy. On first wave, I was boosting Jingliu. On the second wave, I was boosting Blade. So this has a lot of flexibility, and that contributed to the very fast clear time here of 1 cycle. So with all that testing, let me share with you guys the top 3 Jingliu teams for each category that I was able to find. Our top Hypercarry team, which as I mentioned, quite frankly, terrifies me, capable of shredding a 500,000 HP boss almost, which is ice resistant with no way to penetrate that resistance or shred defense, consists of Jingliu, Luocha, Tingyun, and Bronya. This team was able to effortlessly 0 cycle side 1 and get a 1 cycle on side 2. The builds on these characters are ones you've already seen throughout this video. When constructing this team, there's only one thing you need to worry about, and I mentioned it earlier, and that's ensuring that your Bronya is always at least 1 speed slower than your Jingliu. Now, it doesn't matter what speeds these characters are at. The optimal is 134 speed Bronya and 135 speed Jingliu, but it works at any speeds. As long as it's 1 speed slower, you're good to go. So playing this composition is actually a little bit weird, and it's all about the opener. So let me break it down for you. So after you use your techniques on everyone, as you would expect, it all comes down to doing something a little unintuitive. Here, you don't actually want to use Tingyun's ultimate despite having full energy. You can see I actually wasted a ton of energy here using her skill on Jingliu, which is definitely what you want to do here. So after you use one Jingliu skill, you'll move into the transmigration state. After using a enhanced skill and killing one enemy, you'll have enough energy to use an ultimate. After which you can Bronya boost your Jingliu, getting all the buffs, use an ultimate spending that energy, and then immediately after, use that Tingyun ultimate you saved. Now you have an enhanced skill which is buffed up by Tingyun and Bronya and is going to hit a truckload, and you still have even more juice in the tank. You can see the numbers here are absolutely ridiculous. From this point forward, you go with the normal alternating style of Bronya and Jingliu, and you of course are going to be using Tingyun's ultimate whenever it's available and you don't have any energy on Jingliu. And this is going to allow you to extend the transmigration state absolutely absurdly. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this team is able to get 3 ultimates in this run actually, which is absolutely ridiculous. You can see here, one enhanced skill here is going to give me my ultimate. I'll be able to use it, and then I'll have another transmigration stack, so I'll stay in the transmigration, and you can see that Tingyun almost has her ultimate available again. So it's really crazy how many ultimates you can chain together and the amount of buffs that you do get using this team, but it's all about nailing that opener. To finish us off, I wanted to show you the final moments of Cloud Knight Lieutenant Yangqing here as he gets absolutely smashed by our final combo here from this team. You can see he's on 40%. We have only spent 1 cycle so far. If we kill it this wave, we are going to get a 1 cycler, which ends up being our final clear time here. So we're going to go ahead and use a skill on Jingliu here, straight into an ultimate, which is going to give us another transmigration stack here, and it's going to hit for a chunky amount here on an ice resistant enemy, 91k, and then we're going to straight up boost her straight back with Bronya. Still got Tingyun buffs, still got everything loaded and ready, and boom, down he goes. If you don't have all the characters or light tones for this team, don't worry. Here are some substitutions. For Jingliu, you can change out her signature for S5 on the Fall of an Aeon. That's what I would do, but you will lose some damage. If you don't have Luocha, you can use any other Abundance character, Bailu, Lynx, and Natasha. The main thing you're looking for is basic attacks for skill points, so if you can pull that off with any of the other 3, you're good to go. But prioritize staying alive, so use their skills wherever you need, and drop a bit of damage by not using Tingyun's skill if you absolutely have to. For Tingyun and Bronya, you can swap out their light tones for anything you'd like. These were just the ones that I prefer to use and gave me the most damage. The only thing to consider is E6 Tingyun. It will be great quality of life and now be the extra ultimate here or there where you'd otherwise miss it, but it's not a deal breaker. You absolutely don't need it. It's just nice to have when you do finally get it. Our best double damage team, to the surprise of literally no one, is of course Jingliu, Luocha, Blade, and Bronya. Capable of 0 cycling side 1 despite wind resistant enemies, and 1 cycling side 2 with its great flexibility. It really is a team to behold, and I think it's going to stay relevant for quite some time, and it's got a really fun playstyle with a lot of options open to it. The one thing to look out for when building this composition is, similar to last time, you want to make your Bronya 1 speed slower than Jingliu, but also 1 speed slower than Blade. This is going to allow you to double either of their actions whenever you'd like. So if you want to go with extra damage on Jingliu, you can do it. Or if you want to swap on the dime to boosting Blade, you can also do that too. This gives you great elemental coverage between wind as well as ice, and you can line it up nicely as well with whoever's ultimate is closest to activating, meaning you can get a boost which is a lot more efficient. For people looking to really min-max, you want Bronya to be 134 speed, Jingliu to be 135, and Blade to be at 136 or around that point. The reason for this is that you'd prefer Jingliu to move before Blade so she can kill the enemies she needs to get her energy breakpoints just right and be able to access her ultimate on the first turn combo. Playing this team is incredibly simple, and there's only one thing that you want to look out for after using all of your techniques, and that is after using your skill and advancing your action forward on Jingliu, ensure, like last time, that you always target one of the smaller enemies on the field with your first enhanced skill. Killing this will give you the energy you need to immediately activate the ultimate and will fix and make your rotation super smooth. Now, outside of that, all you need to do is boost either Bronya or Blade, and assuming you have your speed set up right, it'll be insane. Now, you can switch between the two depending on which ultimates are available or what kind of enemies you're up against. The choice is yours, but it's a very easy team to play. For substitutions, you can't really swap out Jingliu, Blade, or Bronya because they are the linchpin of the strategy, but you can change out Luocha for any other abundance character as mentioned earlier. Just be aware there is a lot of life draining going on, so you may need some extra heals, but you got plenty of skill points for that, so don't be concerned. Now, in terms of light turns, you can swap out Jingliu's for S5 on the Fall of an Aeon, as mentioned earlier, and you can swap out Blades for a Secret Vow. Bronya's you can change to anything you'd like. Our final team is one I modified from our test to generate our free-to-play top dog. The team consists of Jingliu, Tingyun, and Pela, and from our testing, we were able to get a 0 cycle on side 1 and a 2 cycle on side 2. Now, to make this team a little bit more free-to-play viable though, I used a S5 on the Fall of an Aeon instead of Jingliu's signature. And instead of using Luocha, I used an E0 Bailu, who honestly doesn't have the greatest investment, using a multiplication. Look at these traces, not great, but it got the job done. We were still able to get a 0 cycle on side 1 effortlessly, and going up against an ice-resistant Yang Cheng with no ice vulnerability, we were still able to get a 5 cycle on side 2. Now, a lot of the best teams that we've tested here got 3 cycles, and that was the cream of the crop, so 5 cycles on free-to-play certainly ain't bad. When playing this team, there's a few tricks to know. When entering battle, activate all your techniques as normal, but make sure you enter with Pela's technique. This will give you a global defense shred on all enemies and extra energy. When you enter battle, as mentioned earlier, don't use Tingyun's ultimate. Save it up, just use the skill. We're going to use this later. Then, when it's Pela's turn, make sure you use her skill. This will give you enough energy to immediately activate the ultimate, giving you a huge burst window. When using Jingliu's first skill to enter the transmigration state, you want to make sure the next skill she uses, the enhanced one, tries to kill an enemy. This will give you enough energy to immediately lose the ultimate. Now, we didn't need it in this case, but usually you will need it, so try and get that kill. After which you want to use her ultimate straight away, and then use Tingyun's ultimate straight away on Jingliu. This will give you a massive tempo swing. Not only will you have 2 transmigration stacks and the enemy taking a ton of damage, but now you'll almost have your ultimate up again, so you get that double ult window that we're so used to. Now remember, this is a free-to-play viable team, by the way. Very, very strong, and this allows you to get the crazy 0 cycles, and also very respectable clear speeds on even non-ice weak enemies. For free-to-play players, the only substitutions I think are worth mentioning is you can use literally any healer in the game for this team. It's not skill point hungry, so you can use literally anyone and just spam their skill and you'll be just fine. If you're still dying though, you can sub out either Pela or Tingyun. I recommend subbing out Pela for any other preservation character, whether it's Fireman character, Japad, Fushuan, or even March 7th. This will make you a lot tankier and hopefully allow you to survive in the later difficulties of MOC and Simulated Universe. And the team should work just fine, although you will lose some damage. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. This one took quite a lot of effort, but I'm sure it was worth it. And until next time, good luck with your pulls. Cheers.